the cold void of space, a new terror emerges, not from a distant empire, but from the very depths of the cosmos itself. The hive fleets of the Tyranids, an ancient and relentless force, sweep across the galaxy with a singular purpose: consumption. They are not conquerors in the traditional sense, seeking to enslave or dominate. No, they come to strip a world of all life, devouring it to fuel their insatiable hunger. But what happens when they set their sights on a planet like no other? When the Imperium's defenses are stretched thin and the fate of billions teeters on the brink of annihilation? As the Tyranids descend, there is no time for hope, no room for retreat. There is only survival or death. Before we dive into this harrowing tale of devastation, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to ensure you never miss the most intense stories from the Warhammer 40K universe. It begins in the dead of space, where silence reigns. The void is vast, unforgiving, and for the longest time, nothing stirs. But even in the vastness of the galaxy, something watches, something waits. And then the signals begin. Sporadic at first, barely a whisper against the endless hum of the warp. A disturbance in the pattern of reality, something almost too faint to notice. It could be dismissed as a fluke, a quirk of the sensors, a natural anomaly. But the watchful eyes of the Imperium are always looking. A lowly tech priest on a monitoring station, one of countless machines and minds that keep the Emperor's realm in order, is the first to detect the anomaly. He notes it down with a precise, detached focus, too accustomed to recording data to fully understand what he's just found. Yet, in his mind, a flicker of unease sparks. He reports it, of course. Protocol demands it. But it is brushed aside. A malfunction in the system, perhaps. A flicker of the warp, or a celestial body on an unpredictable trajectory. The analysis continues as normal. Then the anomaly grows. At first, the edges of the signal are faint, a ripple across the fabric of space itself. And then, suddenly, it's unmistakable. No longer a whisper, but a scream of malice, a rhythmic, predatory beat that grows louder by the second. Something is coming, and it is coming fast. The first true wave hits when the sky begins to fall. Ships, not like any the Imperium has seen before. They appear in numbers, casting shadows across the stars like an army of ghosts. Bioships, pulsating with alien life, their forms indescribable in their grotesque splendor. They breach the system, and immediately a dark cloud settles over the planet. The Emperor's light dims in a way it has never dimmed before. Priority 1, the orders come down, urgent and clipped, as if the commanders of the Astra Militarum still believed in victory. Too late. By the time the regiments are mobilized, the Tyranid forces have already landed in scattered swarms, devastating cities with terrifying ease. The Imperium, so used to enemies who fight with guns, tanks, and bombs, is unprepared for the alien tide that rips through them. The first wave, small and seemingly contained, is only the beginning. The real horror is yet to come. The civilians, those caught in the crossfire, don't stand a chance. There is no warning, no time for the barricades to be raised. The ground trembles beneath their feet as massive carnifexes, towering beasts clad in living armor, charge through the streets, crushing everything in their path. Screams rise into the air, drowned out by the sound of chitinous claws raking against stone. The air smells of death, but it is not the familiar smell of gunpowder. No, this is the smell of something else, something biological, something alien. It is a stench of decay, of life consumed. The Astra Militarum responds in kind, their guns blazing, their artillery firing, but they are not ready. The Tyranid hordes are as relentless as they are intelligent. There is no negotiating, no parley. There is only destruction. And the sky, once clear, now darkens, blotted out by the great ships above. They move slowly at first, but their presence casts a heavy shadow, one that stretches across the entire planet. On the ground, the defenders are caught in a vicious trap. They have not faced an enemy like this before. They were prepared for orcs, for the terrifyingly powerful Adeptus Astartes, even for the forces of chaos. But the Tyranids? The Tyranids do not fight to conquer, they fight to consume. The concept of a battle is foreign to them. They are an unstoppable force of nature, and nature, as the soldiers soon learn, is merciless. The survivors, scattered across the cities, turn to their faith, invoking the Emperor's name, but even their most devout prayers seem to fall on deaf ears. The fear sets in. It is palpable. It seeps through the cracks of the barricades, into the hearts of even the most seasoned warriors. The Hive Fleet is here. It is real. It is inevitable. And it does not stop. And yet, even in the midst of such overwhelming despair, the Imperium fights on. They hold their ground for as long as they can, rallying around the few remaining strongholds. But they know, deep down, they know that this will not be an easy fight. This will not be like any battle they have fought before. The Tyranids are not just another enemy. They are a plague, an infestation that cannot be eradicated. And the war, as it seems, has only just begun. The streets of the planet now resemble a war zone, a place where all the laws of civilization, of order, have been completely upended. The chaos is not the usual kind born from battle. This is a deeper, more primal disorder. The Tyranid creatures are like a force of nature. No strategy, no mercy, just an overwhelming flood of alien life that tears apart everything in its path. Soldiers, once proud and disciplined, are now scattered, their formations shattered like glass. Those who still fight cling to whatever scraps of hope they can find, though it's harder now to even remember why they continue. The Astra Militarum, long accustomed to fighting in the most desperate of circumstances, are being overwhelmed, not by the power of their foes' weapons, but by the sheer numbers. The infantry units, usually a formidable force in their own right, find themselves facing an enemy that doesn't need to aim, doesn't need to reload, an enemy that comes in waves, each more destructive than the last. With each new iteration, the Tyranid creatures adapt, and the soldiers of the Imperium are left scrambling to keep up. Every corner becomes a battleground. The echoes of artillery fire bounce off of cracked buildings and torn streets, while the sound of screeching, bestial cries fills the air. Above, the sky seems alive, swirling with the presence of the Tyranid bioships, vast, ominous, and entirely unfeeling. In their approach, the soldiers' reports are full of the same grim words, again and again. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. A heavy sense of doom hangs over the planet. Meanwhile, the Tyranids continue to spread their infection, not just of life, but of the very planet itself. These creatures, horrifying in their efficiency, are not simply conquerors. They are biological artists, reshaping the environment itself to suit their needs. In the heart of the cities, alien flora, strange, jagged plants that pulsate with life, begin to emerge, sprouting from the very bones of the ruined buildings. A creeping, invasive growth takes root where human civilization once stood. The landscape itself is transformed into a breeding ground for their kind. The survivors of the initial wave are left to regroup in what remains of the planet's few strongholds. They huddle together in dark, echoing bunkers, trying to ward off despair with prayers to the Emperor, but the feeling is inescapable. This is different. The Tyranids are not an enemy they can just fight off. No amount of firepower, no tactical genius, no heroics will be enough. They are fighting a force of nature itself, something that cannot be reasoned with, something that will not stop until there is nothing left to consume. The planet's once proud cities are now a shadow of their former selves, mere husks awaiting the final blow. It's clear now that the Imperium is outmatched. They had known of the Tyranids, of course. Every Imperial Guard was taught the horrors they represented, and the stories of planets lost to their endless hunger were whispered from one soldier to the next. But nothing could prepare them for the reality of the situation. The Hive Fleet is not a myth. It is here, and it has only one purpose: to feed. The civilians who remain hidden in the ruins hear the stories of the Planetary Defense Force's last stand, but none of them have seen victory. None of them have seen a way out. There is only one certainty. This fight, this war, will not be over quickly. The Hive Fleet does not give up. It doesn't retreat. It consumes until there is nothing left but dust and bones. The planet, with its proud history and resilient people, is slowly slipping away into the black maw of the Tyranids. And somewhere, deep within the heart of the planet, as the last of the human forces regroup in a dim, forgotten corner of their once great world, an officer, battle-worn and weary, clutches his weapon tightly. "Hold the line," he whispers to himself, more out of habit than hope. There is no one left to hear. But the battle, for whatever it's worth, still rages on. The first signs of victory are fleeting, almost laughable in their fragile hope. The Tyranids, seemingly endless in their numbers, press forward in waves that devour everything in their path. The once proud armies of the Astra Militarum, renowned for their ability to fight back even in the most desperate situations, find themselves being outclassed by an enemy that simply doesn't care. The initial response is chaos. The planet's cities, the last bastions of human civilization, are brimming with the desperate movements of soldiers, civilians, and engineers trying to build some form of defense against the onslaught. But it's not enough. The massive carnifexes, lumbering behemoths of living armor, charge through military barricades as though they are nothing but sandcastles. Their massive claws tear through the walls of what were once bustling market districts, reducing entire buildings to rubble. In the face of such overwhelming destruction, the Astra Militarum fights with the only weapon it knows: sheer determination. They make a stand, not in the hopes of victory, but in the necessity of survival. For every soldier who falls to the Tyranid horde, another steps forward, dragging themselves from the remnants of fallen comrades to fire their last round into the mass of claws and teeth before them. The sounds of battle are like a symphony of death, a cacophony of gunfire, shrieks, and the sickening sounds of flesh being torn asunder. Amidst the chaos, there is an eerie stillness that hangs over the battlefield, an absence of fear. For the Tyranids, fear does not exist. The Hive Mind, an unrelenting, singular consciousness, dictates everything. The creatures move as one, an organic machine driven only by the need to consume. The Imperium's soldiers, on the other hand, are scattered, fighting not as a unified whole, but as individuals bound together by their shared purpose. There is no harmony in their defense, there is only survival, and that survival comes at an increasingly high cost. The first wave of the Tyranid assault seems unstoppable. The bioships that hover ominously above the planet cast shadows that block out the sun, and their presence alone is enough to break the spirits of even the most battle-hardened soldiers. The sky, once clear and blue, is now a constant gray, swirling with the movement of flying Tyranid creatures, their wings like the buzzing of a swarm of locusts, their forms just a blur of menace. As the battle rages on, the defenders begin to realize that no weapon, no matter how advanced, will be enough. The Tyranids are not like the orcs, who can be beaten back with raw force. They are not like the forces of chaos, whose armies can be outmaneuvered or outwitted. The Tyranids are relentless, an unstoppable force of nature, and every attempt to slow their advance only serves to make them more furious. The defenders are forced into a desperate strategy: retreat. But even that is not without its costs. The city's streets are now choked with rubble, twisted metal, and the bodies of the fallen. Every corner is a kill zone, every building a potential death trap. The soldiers fight not just the Tyranids, but the very landscape itself, which is now alien, unrecognizable. What was once a familiar world has turned into a twisted, bio-engineered nightmare as the Tyranids reshape it in their image. It is during this retreat that the true scale of the invasion becomes apparent. What was once considered a few skirmishes has now turned into a full-scale planetary assault. The skies are filled with the bioships, each a massive leviathan capable of laying waste to entire cities in a single strike. On the ground, the Tyranid forces move with a deadly efficiency, cutting off escape routes, sealing off areas with walls of flesh and alien plant life, forcing the survivors into smaller and smaller pockets. The enemy is not merely relentless, they are intelligent. The Tyranids, driven by the Hive Mind, know exactly how to dismantle their opposition. The more the Astra Militarum fights back, the more the Tyranids adapt. Their tactics shift with frightening precision, as if they are learning from every skirmish, every clash. What was once a battle of attrition becomes a massacre of minds and bodies, a test of endurance against an opponent who refuses to stop, refuses to retreat. In the midst of all this, an Astra Militarum officer, one of the few remaining leaders, stands amidst the crumbling city, eyes wide with the grim realization that they are not facing an army. They are facing something else entirely. The realization strikes like a bolt of lightning, sharp and sudden. The Tyranids do not fight for control. They do not fight for glory or land. They fight to consume. And in the end, they will consume everything. The officer watches as another wave of Tyranids pushes forward, a sea of claws and teeth, of impossible, unnatural creatures. "We fight on," he mutters to himself, clutching his last pistol. But even as the words leave his mouth, the sound of 1,000 screams fills the air, the sound of death closing in, of the swarm that will not stop until they are all gone. The Tyranid swarm advances like a tidal wave, crashing against the last of the planet's defenses. The once proud military fortifications, designed to withstand the most brutal of imperial assaults, are now nothing more than shattered remnants of a forgotten age. The ground trembles as waves of gaunts, each one a horrifyingly perfect blend of insect and predator, surge forward in unison. Their chittering is deafening, a maddening sound that drowns out the cries of the defenders, drowning out all reason and logic. They are not driven by emotion or malice. They are driven by an unrelenting hunger, a singular desire to consume and strip the planet of its very essence. Above the chaos, the massive bioships hang in the atmosphere like silent gods, watching as their creations below tear apart the remnants of human civilization. The sky has darkened into an unnatural dusk, a blanket of horror that prevents any semblance of sunlight from reaching the surface. The sun, once the life-giver to all, is now blocked by a pulsating biological armada. The bioships' forms, vast and unnatural, shift as if alive, like living mountains that drift slowly across the heavens. Each of these vessels is a weapon in its own right, capable of raining destruction upon the surface below. The ground is already littered with debris, twisted ruins, and the bodies of the fallen. The Adeptus Astartes, the Imperium's finest warriors, arrive too late to stem the tide. Their deep, guttural roars of battle cry reverberate as they engage, their bolters roaring as they unload torrents of ammunition into the swarm. But even they are not enough. The Tyranids are unyielding, and the Astartes' sheer strength is countered by the overwhelming numbers of the Xenos. The Marines fight valiantly, their power armor shimmering under the fire of their weapons, their chainswords singing as they carve through the monstrous Tyranid forces. But it is clear to them, too, the battle will not be won by might alone. In the streets of the planet's capital, the city has turned into a battlefield of unimaginable proportions. What was once a bustling, vibrant hub for industry and culture is now a tomb. The structures that had once stood proud are being overrun, consumed by the growth of Tyranid bioweapons that infect the very stone and steel of the city. Buildings collapse, gutted from the inside out by the alien forces, and where human homes once stood, towering, pulsating hives now stretch to the sky, their grotesque forms twisting and pulsing with the essence of the Tyranid hive. Desperation sets in. The Astra Militarum, scattered and broken, find themselves fighting for survival in the ruins of their cities. As the weeks drag on, supply lines are severed and communication becomes erratic. The Imperium's once mighty forces are crumbling, their ranks thinned by endless waves of monstrous creatures. The survivors cling to every scrap of hope, every fleeting moment of triumph. But the Tyranids' advance is relentless, and with every fallen soldier, the swarm grows stronger. The battle is no longer about victory. It is about delaying the inevitable. The horror of the situation becomes evident when the first of the planet's population is taken. The civilians, once hopeful, now scream as they are dragged into the jaws of the Tyranid swarm. The soldiers, too, find themselves becoming prey. Their laser guns, while powerful, are ineffective against the sheer size and power of the Tyranid beasts. The first to fall to the enemy are often those stationed on the front lines, those who believed they had seen it all. But even they, hardened as they were, are overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the Tyranid assault. The realization strikes them like a bolt of lightning. This is no longer just a battle. This is extinction. In the midst of the fighting, a soldier stumbles into a darkened alley, his armor scratched and bloodied. He is just a boy, really, barely an adult, but already too familiar with the horrors of war. His breathing is shallow, panicked, Around him, the sounds of the battle are distant, muffled. As he crouches behind a crumbling wall, trying to catch his breath, he hears the unmistakable sound of claws scraping across stone. The Tyranids are close. They always are. He is not the only one. As the last strongholds fall, small pockets of survivors are scattered throughout the city. They cling to whatever hope they can muster, but it's hard to see how they can survive. How can anyone survive when the world they once knew is being devoured in front of their eyes? The swarm presses on, and the fight becomes less and less about resistance and more about evasion. The last survivors, those who can still move, find themselves trapped in a city now alive with the alien pulse of the Tyranids. They know, deep down, that they are no longer fighting for victory. They are fighting simply to delay the inevitable end. And in their hearts, they know that the swarm will not stop. It never stops. The Tyranid forces advance, overwhelming the last bastion of resistance. There is no reprieve, no salvation, only the inevitability of consumption. The question now is not whether the planet will fall, it is a matter of when. And for the survivors, it becomes a race not against the enemy, but against time itself. The days blend together as the remnants of the planetary defense forces are pushed deeper into the shadows of their once glorious cities. The Tyranid swarm is everywhere. On the ground, in the skies, even in the very soil beneath the streets. The world has become a nightmarish reflection of its former self. Where once there were towering skyscrapers, now only ruins remain. The tyrannical pulse of the Hive Fleet throbs in the distance, a constant reminder that the very ground underfoot is no longer a sanctuary. Humanity's existence here is fading, becoming a mere memory. In the heart of the remaining strongholds, Imperial forces still make a stand, though their strength is all but spent. They fight on, not because they believe they will win, but because they know no other way. The soldiers of the Astra Militarum, those hardened, battle-worn men and women, have grown thin, gaunt from lack of food and water. Their faces are pale from the constant strain, their eyes wide with exhaustion and disbelief. They have seen things, witnessed horrors so dark that no training could have prepared them for the sheer magnitude of the Tyranid invasion. They now understand, perhaps more clearly than ever, that they are fighting not for survival, but for their own souls. The psychological toll begins to set in, gnawing away at the survivors, those few who remain. At night, the only sounds are the distant screeches of Tyranid creatures and the occasional stifled sob of a soldier, too weary to keep fighting. Their morale is shattered, broken by the realization that nothing they do will ever stop the swarm. The endless roar of the Hive Fleet drowns out all hope, leaving only the bitter taste of despair. There are rumors, half-hearted prayers whispered in darkened rooms, that the Emperor will send aid, that the Astra Militarum will come to rescue them. But no one believes it anymore. The survivors hold their positions, the last of the planetary defense forces, surrounded by a web of alien growth. Strange alien vines pulse with a sickly light, creeping through the streets, twisting and tangling like monstrous tendrils. It's not just the Tyranids that invade this world. They are reshaping it, bending it to their will. What was once a world of human life is now an ecosystem of flesh and bone, the very air thick with the scent of decay. The planet is alive with the grotesque alien influence of the Hive Mind. The very ground has become a living thing, pulsing with an unnatural energy, as if the planet itself has been transformed into a living, breathing extension of the Tyranid consciousness. And with this transformation comes madness. The horrors the soldiers face are not just physical, but mental. They see their comrades fall to the swarm, torn apart or consumed whole, their bodies devoured by the Tyranid creatures with terrifying efficiency. But the madness sets in when they begin to notice something else. The Tyranid creatures aren't just destroying, they're evolving. The swarms adapt to every attempt the defenders make to repel them. The creatures grow smarter with every engagement, learning from each human strategy and countering it with disturbing precision. It's as if they are mocking the Imperium's resolve, a game in which the only rule is that there is no escape. In one of the last remaining strongholds, an officer, his rank long forgotten, his uniform a ragged remnant of the past, gathers what is left of his platoon. They have not had a proper meal in days, their ammunition is running low, and their medical supplies are a distant memory. His voice, once full of command and strength, is now rough, worn. His hands shake as he grips his last pistol, as though it might be the last piece of his identity that hasn't been consumed by the madness of their situation. "We fight until the end," he says, though his words are hollow, barely a whisper above the rumble of distant Tyranid movements. "We die here, but we die fighting for the Emperor." But even he knows the truth. They are already dead. Their deaths are merely a formality, a foregone conclusion. They know what awaits them. The Tyranids do not leave survivors. The officer has seen it before, on other worlds. The swarm consumes everything. The people, the cities, the very earth itself. All of it is absorbed into the hive mind. Nothing is left but a husk of what once was. There is no dignity in this death, no glory. The soldiers know they are being swallowed whole, not just by the Tyranid swarm, but by the abyss of oblivion itself. There is no hope, no final battle to be won. Only the realization that the end is inevitable, and it is closing in faster than they could ever have imagined. The world will not be remembered. The soldiers will not be remembered. The Tyranids will wipe it all away. And yet, in the midst of all this despair, a few still cling to what remains of their humanity. They find brief moments of connection, shared cigarettes in the dead of night, hushed words of comfort, a fleeting embrace before the inevitable. It is these small moments that keep them going, that remind them of what they are fighting for, even when they know it is futile. They fight because they are human, and that, for all its flaws and weaknesses, is something the Tyranids can never take from them. As the Tyranid swarm draws ever closer, the soldiers huddle together, waiting for the end. The distant shrieks of the creatures are the only warning they receive. They know it is only a matter of time before the darkness engulfs them entirely, before they are consumed just like everything else on this doomed world. The inevitable end draws closer, like the slow, suffocating grip of the void itself. The last pockets of resistance on the planet are little more than fading embers in a vast, consuming darkness. The survivors, those who haven't succumbed to despair or the ravenous Tyranid swarm, are forced to witness the slow erasure of their world. The air is thick with the smell of decay, the once bustling cities now nothing more than ghostly husks. Where human life once thrived, there is only alien growth, alien horror, as the Tyranid creatures reshape the very planet to suit their needs. The final strongholds are held not by strategy or hope, but by the sheer force of will. The defenders, now reduced to barely a fraction of their original numbers, are scattered in small, desperate groups. They cling to what little remains, fighting tooth and nail to protect whatever they can, even as the ground beneath them shifts and pulsates with the alien presence of the Hive Fleet. The Imperial banners, once proud symbols of humanity's might, are now tattered and blood-soaked, fluttering weakly in the toxic winds of their dying world. In the streets, the soldiers of the Astra Militarum move cautiously, weapons raised, their eyes darting from shadow to shadow. Every corner could be the end. The Tyranids are everywhere, their presence overwhelming, as though the very earth itself is alive with their hunger. The roar of the carnifexes echoes through the ruins like the thunder of an approaching storm, and the chittering of the gaunts grows louder, like the sound of insects preparing to swarm. For every battle won, another is lost. Every street corner held is a victory, but with each victory comes the knowledge that the next battle will be their last. The swarming hordes continue to press in from all sides. No quarter is given, and none is expected. The Imperium's soldiers, ever brave and determined, can feel their strength waning. Their ammunition is running low, their supplies depleted, and yet they fight on. They fight not for the planet, not for glory, but for the memory of what once was, for the sake of the Emperor who they pray will grant them deliverance, even in their final moments. Some of the soldiers, once filled with the fire of youthful determination, are now empty shells of their former selves. They no longer speak of honor, no longer speak of sacrifice. All that remains is the act of survival, of continuing to move, to fight, to hold the line, even when they know in their hearts it's already lost. There is no longer any pretense. The battle has become a grim, silent struggle. The only sound is the relentless movement of the Tyranids, their biomass devouring the planet and everything on it. As the last of the Imperial forces are driven deeper into their final stronghold, the true horror of the Tyranid advance becomes apparent. The world is no longer just a battlefield. It is becoming the Tyranids' new home. The creatures are not just destroying, they are reshaping. The land itself is transforming into a living, pulsing extension of the Hive Mind. The once beautiful gardens are now twisted jungles of organic matter, with alien vines curling through the streets and buildings that have become nothing more than husks. Even the air seems alive with the scent of decay and alien growth. The ground beneath their feet is no longer solid, but a grotesque landscape of shifting organic matter, as though the very earth has become a part of the Hive Fleet. The defenders, now trapped in the final bastion of their world, realize that no reinforcements will come. The Imperium, vast as it is, cannot protect them. The far-off whispers of the Astra Militarum's might are nothing more than distant hopes, lies whispered in the dark to give them strength to continue fighting. In their hearts, they know they will not survive this. The final battle takes place in the heart of what was once a proud city, now reduced to a battlefield of impossible odds. The defenders hold the last stronghold, a shattered fortress surrounded by towering piles of rubble and dead Tyranid carcasses. The air is thick with the acrid scent of battle, the smell of blood and fire. The ground shakes as the Tyranids charge, each monstrous creature crashing through the ruins with terrifying force. The sky overhead is filled with the ominous presence of the bioships, their massive forms blotting out the stars. The soldiers fight not as an army, but as individuals, each struggling for their own survival. Their weapons fire with desperation, their bolters roaring as they lay down their last lines of defense. The officers, those few remaining leaders, issue commands, but their voices are barely heard over the roar of the Tyranid swarm. They fight not for victory, but for the simple hope that they can hold on just a little longer to make their last stand as proud as the Emperor would have wanted. But as the walls of their stronghold crumble, the Tyranid forces pour in from all directions. The defenders fight until they are overwhelmed, until they can no longer stand. The once proud fortress falls, and with it, the last remnants of the planet's resistance. The planet falls into complete darkness as the Hive Fleet's control takes full effect. The world is no longer a human world, but an extension of the Tyranid will. The land is shaped into something new, something alien, as the planet is consumed by the never-ending hunger of the Hive Mind. The defenders are gone, and the planet is lost. Yet even in the face of such utter devastation, the war is not over. The Tyranid Hive Fleet moves on, its hunger endless, its reach stretching ever further into the galaxy. And for those few survivors, trapped in the fading embers of a dying world, the only certainty remains. The Hive Fleet does not stop. It does not rest. And the galaxy is slowly becoming its feast. The battle is over. The last whispers of resistance fade, drowned out by the sound of the Tyranid swarm moving ever onward, leaving nothing but broken cities, twisted landscapes, and the hollow echoes of those who once called the planet home. The survivors, those few who remain, are left to face the aftermath. Not just the loss of a world, but the slow and inevitable march of their own extinction. The planet, now utterly transformed, has become a twisted reflection of what it once was. Where once there were great cities filled with human ambition and achievement, now only the remnants of biostructures remain. The streets that once buzzed with the energy of life are now choked with the grotesque tendrils of Tyranid growth. The very earth itself seems to pulse with a foreign organic life, as though the planet has been consumed, digested, and reshaped to suit the Hive Mind's will. Alien vines snake through the skeletal remains of buildings, and the air is thick with the scent of decay and rot. The survivors, what few there are, have been reduced to scavengers in their own home. The once proud military regiments of the Astra Militarum have become mere shadows of their former selves, their ranks thinned by the constant wave of Tyranid assault. The soldiers, disheveled and broken, now huddle in small groups, hiding in the depths of what remains of the world's underground bunkers or in the shattered remnants of structures. There is no glory in survival, no triumph to be had. Only the grim reality of loss. Those few who remain are plagued by the memory of the battle, the screams of their comrades, the overwhelming sight of the Tyranid swarm, the feeling of being powerless against a force so vast, so unyielding, that it is impossible to comprehend. They have witnessed firsthand the utter destruction of everything they once held dear. And yet, even now, even in the darkest hours, they cling to life, to some shred of hope that perhaps the Imperium will send reinforcements, that perhaps there is some way to stop the spread of the Tyranid plague. But deep in their hearts, they know that this hope is nothing more than a fleeting dream. The Hive Fleet does not stop. It does not retreat. It consumes. and nothing, not even the might of the Emperor himself, can stand against it. For those who remain, survival has become a daily struggle. Water is scarce, food even more so. The once thriving cities that dotted the landscape are now nothing more than tombs, hollowed-out shells of their former selves. The survivors must scavenge, picking through the wreckage of their civilization, searching for anything that can be used for sustenance. But it is never enough. Each day they watch as the Tyranids grow stronger, as the planet becomes more and more entrenched in the alien biomass that coats every surface. The planet, now a graveyard, serves as a grim reminder of the true scale of the Tyranid threat. The Hive Fleet does not stop. It moves on, devouring all in its path. The survivors, those who manage to escape the initial onslaught, are left with no future. Only the lingering, gnawing knowledge that they are trapped on a world that is no longer their own. The Tyranid forces will not stop here. They will move on to the next world, their insatiable hunger driving them ever forward. And as the survivors watch, helpless, the planet begins to change before their eyes. The once lush forests, the sprawling cities, the towering monuments to human achievement, all of it is being consumed by the alien forces. The Tyranids reshape the very world, turning it into something that is no longer recognizable. The once proud human empire has been reduced to nothing more than a footnote in the history of the Hive Fleet. In the final hours, as the last defenders gather together in the planet's ruins, the realization settles in. There will be no rescue. There will be no salvation. The planet has fallen, and with it, the hope of survival. The survivors are left with one final choice: to wait for the inevitable end or to try and escape, though both options are equally futile. But even in the face of this overwhelming loss, there is something that remains, something the Tyranids cannot take: the will to survive, the will to keep fighting, even when the fight seems hopeless. The last remnants of humanity, battered and broken as they are, will not go quietly into the night. They will carry the memory of their world with them, even as the Tyranids consume everything else. The Hive Fleet moves on, its hunger never ceasing, its reach ever expanding. But for those who survive, the aftermath is just the beginning of something far more dangerous. For the Tyranids do not leave behind a broken world. They leave behind an emptiness, a void that echoes with the haunting reminder that nothing in the galaxy is safe from their insatiable hunger.